Team Fortress 2 holds one of the most frustrating positions within the current video game market as the game everyone respects, but no one actually plays. For such a titan in the industry, it has a shocking inability to retain new players, and yet, there's still no shortage of praise still sung about it. The relationships TF2 once created with its dedicated player base were inescapable, akin to a lifelong bond taken on a generation of gamer souls. Although these relationships have been strained time and time again, it doesn't take away from how profound they once were. So, what's keeping newer generations of players from falling in love with it the same way we used to? I don't believe in the common sentiment that the game's dated. Plenty of relevant games can be argued to be dated, but it's not like the brain patched out finding the fun in this. The unfortunate truth is, TF2 fights tooth and nail to keep its treasures hidden. The game always took extra effort to get into, but where new players could once march to their own tune, they're now forced into awkwardly following a broken pace. TF2 is still the most fun you can have online, it just forgot how to show it.
Indeed. And now he's here to us.
To best understand TF2's incoming players, it's important to discuss the influence of the current FPS market. When introducing friends to shooters like Valorant, Apex, and the like, I have a fundamental knowledge that if the game doesn't click with them in their first few sessions, it likely just isn't for them. These games are homogeneous, they're structured, clean, and predictable, and most importantly, they form the basis of the expectations for a newer generation of players. The developers for these titles work day and night to maintain the track that they want their users on. If a player doesn't enjoy the first ride, they likely won't enjoy the next. This design is antithetical to everything that makes TF2 TF2, which is more comparable to a guided tour on the fiery fist of pain. Doctor! What sets TF2 apart from other titles is the game's unique ability to adapt its rails to the will of the player, rather than forcing the player's will to adapt to it. Given enough time with the game's vast toolbox, an endless potential of player expression can be drawn from its usage. Given any particular match, at any time I could do this, or this. The game is simple, but in the same way a wrench is simple, that doesn't mean there isn't a whole lot of things you can do with it. Where most modern shooters sit you in front of a coloring sheet and ask you to draw on the lines with your favorite colored pencil, TF2 gives you a bucket of paint and throws you at a blank wall. Yeah, I might not paint the prettiest picture, but at least it's mine. I can run in circles, build on last, punch the shit out of people, put my ass off, or pull off some bullshit with friends.
You're literally the worst.
I get to decide the experience instead of the game deciding it for me. This is what makes TF2 click, but you'd be hard-pressed to blame new players for never seeing it. Unearthing TF2's gold requires letting go of the modern sensibilities of where to start digging. This isn't the problem, after all, it's the defying of expectations that made the game so special in the first place. The problem is that it adopted a system that feeds into the expectations it was never meant to please. For 9 long years, Valve respected their original vision, and for 10 much longer years, they pissed all over it.
Elephant green screen effect.
Dropping in 2016, Meet Your Match was TF2's attempt to be just like the big kids, adopting the matchmaking system that to this day severely misguides the new user experience. Each game's length went from indefinite to finite, with clear-cut winners and losers. A competition begins, an objective is completed, and the match is closed. Sound familiar? The obvious flaws of this system have been talked about to death, but there's an often overlooked aspect that's silently torn the game apart for years. For every group of old heads harkening back on the game TF2 once was, there's an equivalent amount of new players who never got to see TF2 at all.
Oh, it goes R.
I love
For the uninitiated, you're now dropped into a game that looks just like any other. Given the presentation, one you've grown so familiar with, you feel an immediate pressure to play to your strengths to win.
Alright, let's do this.
You run out, get your shit blown off, and wonder why people hyped the game up in the first place.
Turn this game on and I say, this game is old and sucks balls.
The Meet Your Match system only sets you up to compare TF2 to every other new-gen FPS game, where winning is the fun and balance is the harbinger of it. Even under the best-case scenario where the system actually works, it still misguides the player into viewing TF2 as something it's not. When players are met with the structure of a system they're used to reaping the conveniences of, but are stripped from the real conveniences themselves, the only thing they see about TF2 is how it's this inferior version of every other hero shooter, rather than seeing it as an experience wholly unique in itself.
Ride on a one-horse shopping sleigh.
While the game once proudly stood as an exception to the norm, it now masks its talents under the successes of its competition. Upon release in 2007, its distinctive art style was enough to make it clear to players to leave their expectations at the door. When every other game looked like this, how could you boot up your first match of TF2 expecting it to abide by the same rules? But we're long past the landscape of 2007, and games have adapted to having visual taste of their own. For it to continue to stand out, it needed its gameplay to hold firmly in its original freeform direction, expanding upon the system that once shined light on what made the game so different in the first place. For 5 years, TF2 had this system, known as Quick Play. To be brief, Quick Play matches had 45-minute time limits with rounds restarting upon each's completion. There was no end, only brief intermissions, and thanks to this, half of my early hours were just spent wandering around staring at each map's scenery. There was no pressure, there was no implication to win, there was only my curiosity to see what else the game had to offer. Now every candle is lit, only for the fire to be put out once the wax starts melting. I'm not saying that the modern approach to shooters isn't fun, but expecting TF2 to be fun in the same way simply isn't compatible. Newer games justify the use of a matchmaking system by having a predictable course of action for each of their game's tracks. Heroes are placed into each to create an illusion of bending the game's rules, but the game's rules are only bent as far as the developers see fit. On the other hand, TF2 sees a set of 24 players who might as well be sharing a room as they play completely separate games. While its design lends itself to brief moments of natural team play, these are purely complementary to the stupid shit everyone's already doing on their own.
That was the worst thing I've ever seen.
The freedom to play by my own desires is the reason losing in TF2 is often just as fun as a hard-fought victory. If I humiliated a guy and laughed over his corpse, I checked off my box for an enjoyable experience. The outcome of the match is only as valuable as I deem it to be. If I wanted to play a game for the satisfaction of purely competing, I'd probably choose any of the other options. While I have the time with the game to know that's not what I come for, new players don't have that luxury. They only perceive it by its surface, which is filtered through the competitive front that Your Match provides. The game no longer frames itself to shine attention on its best elements, leading to unjust assumptions from the new players we're so desperate to keep. With enough patience, they're likely to see through it, but you can't blame any of them for falling back to shooters that serve their expectations better. It's an unfortunate reality of what it takes to get new players invested in TF2. It's an awkward tug-of-war between emphasizing the good at the game's core, while also making it clear that it veils it in so much bullshit. How do you attest for a game discordant with itself? For a generation of users frustrated with competitive titles, TF2 is the reprieve. Although it makes them trudge through sludge to see it, the level of freedom it grants you is still unparalleled by any other game. In a perfect world, Valve would reopen the floodgates, and I could be laid to rest knowing people are calling it mid again for the right reasons. Until then, TF2 will only continue to be viewed as the game that once was, while new generations will continue to miss out on the fun it still is. Fortress 2, nothing's gonna stop me from loving you.